Moving onwards to our next session on fostering ethical guidance in finance, cultivating trustworthiness and upholding moral values. Introducing our thought leader, Mr. Anil Suneja, CFO, Director of Finance at Medtronics. Mr. Anil Suneja is a dynamic business leader with extensive healthcare experience across diverse roles and regions. As the commercial finance leader at Medtronic, he excels in P&L transformation, digital strategy, and team building. Anil is also recognized for his public speaking and mentorship in finance. A huge round of applause for Mr. Anil Suneja.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Is this working? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is what happens when a session comes after lunch and after such a huge calculation of valuations and other stuff. And I was surprised to see the sequencing. Can you hear me at the back? All right, perfect. So I was surprised to see the sequencing of this, which was coming right after big valuations, and we were talking about now the ethical space. So first of all, big honor for me to be here among the seasoned finance professional. Just to add to the introduction, I'm Anil Suneja. 20 years of professional experience, mainly into healthcare space, and presently I'm the CFO of a medical device company called Medtronic. When the team reached out to me on this topic of fostering ethical guidance in finance, I was like, this is very basic. Do we really need to talk about this? This is something which is part of our professional DNA. And then I realized that this topic may be more relevant, not from a sharing perspective, but from a reiteration perspective. So taking example of, all of us have been driving our respective vehicles for like a couple of decades, and we see red light, and we know what to do on red light. But many a times, when we see red light, and when we see nobody around, we tend to jump it, isn't it? That happens. Ethics is a similar way in our profession as well. And for finance, I think this is paramount importance because we are the torchbearer of the organization. We are the flag bearer of the organization. So what I'm going to talk in the next 15 minutes or so is not about sharing what ethics is and all that stuff. All of us know that. I think I'm looking for sharing some of the practical insights which I have experienced from many of the leaders sitting here, as well as with my professional experience, but also to get into a little bit of engagement to understand what you have been doing when you come in a situation of a dilemma. So starting with some of the basic aspects, we know ethics. We know ethics are something which is the principles and values of the organization, which is unwritten rules. We know ethics in finance is all about maintaining that integrity of the financial statement, making sure that we uphold honesty, integrity, at the same time transparency of our financial statement. And needless to say, why we need ethics in finance is all about driving or making sure that we have a sustainable business. This is something which is known throughout our career, throughout our journey. But I think there have been times when, as a finance leader or as an organization, we have to play a very important role in laying down that culture. As a CFO, we are responsible of reporting information, reporting out the numbers, reporting out how our organization is doing to various stakeholders. So what are we expected to do? We are expected to maintain highest standard of ethics, but how do we do that? I think the first thing which comes across is walk the talk. With the entire ecosystem of startup coming in, with the fact that there is pressure on profitability, there are pressures on finance professional to see, okay, how can we help the organization to report the maximum numbers? And needless to say, that is where we as a leader has to come up and talk about it, what's right, what's not right. And that's what walk the talk is all about. To me, finance professional leaders like us are driving a car where our kids are sitting in the back. They learn from us. They learn what we do. Similarly, all of us as a leader, the way we respond to our ethical dilemma, the way we respond to any situation where the need of the organization is different, is what our future generation of leaders is learning from us. So walk the talk is the first thing which comes across. I think the second thing which is there as a role of finance leader in setting that ethical standard is to simplify the policies. When I say that is build in those policies, procedures which help us to achieve the organization goal, but simplify the adherence to that. At the same time, I would say complexify the deviation for that. One of the things which I have personally learned, and this has been resonated with many of the CFOs here, is how do we make process simple is one part, but if we don't make our deviation approval complex enough, there will not be adherence to it. In many organizations, what happens is you have a process which is complex enough, but we don't talk about deviation. And the fact of the matter is deviation do happen. It is not something which is unusual, but if the deviation approval to any of the process which relates to the ethics, which enhance the ethics or compliance to the organization is easy, trust me, that organization will find, the team member in that organization will find taking deviation far easy than following the process. That's the second thing which is, as a leader, we need to build in, make the process simple for adherence, but make the deviation approval complex enough so that it encourages the team to follow through the process. I think risk management is something which has been a very constant topic in the last 5 years. Post-COVID, this has got more attention to it, but when it comes to risk from a compliance perspective or a ethics perspective, it's all about which industry we relate to, how industry operates, and how do we strengthen our internal operations, our internal processes to make sure that what industry is following or the risk which we have, we mitigate that risk to a potential extent. I think whistleblower policy is there in many organizations. Culture of speak up is another thing which, as a finance leader, we have to establish in the organization to make sure that people speak up when they feel that something wrong is happening. And in addition to that, I think it's important to make sure that there is retaliation policies being in place. There is non-retaliation stuff because that will give the comfort to our teams to speak up. And last but not the least is more about training. I think more we talk about these topics of ethics in finance or ethics in the organization, the more team understand that this is not just walk, this is not just the talk, this is walk the talk as well. When it comes to finance professional like us, one of the core things which is expected from us is the transparency in the financial reporting. And needless to say, as I mentioned earlier, with the entire ecosystem of startup coming in, there are areas where finance teams are under pressure. How do you make sure that the valuations are the highest? How do you make sure that you support the promoter, you support the founder to gain the maximum valuation? And that is where finance has to be a tough cop. Making sure that our numbers are accurate, we are reporting what is supposed to be reported, making sure that we have clear disclosure. As a startup organization, if you're a tech company, if your tech is not working, the technical obsolescence of that is one big disclosure which you have to make. As an organization, if your products are not working, there is a product recall, there is a litigation going on, all this information may not be in public domain. But the stakeholders view the CFOs, leaders like all of us in the organization as well as outside, to ensure that we report what is right to report. The third is all about compliance to standards. I think there are multiple standards which applies to this situation. which we all of us do on day-in-day basis. But I think these three things are predominantly important for us to kind of make sure that the financial statements are reflecting the true state of affair. But all this, what I mentioned, sounds theoretical, right? There are practical challenges which comes across when we deal with situations. How do we deal with that? This is where I personally have found this 3P, which one of my coach and mentor taught me multiple years back, which I believe is still relevant today. So here is the thing. Let's do an activity. We'll learn this 3P, which is purpose, perception, and process. What I need from you is think about our dilemma situation in your mind and try to apply this test along with me. And then see whether it works for you or not. Okay? Let's start with first P, which is the purpose. If we are in a dilemma situation, first thing which we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose? Why do we need to do it? Is it going to benefit somebody? Is it going to protect the interest of a given stakeholder? Is it aligned with the organization vision? Is it aligned with the organization value? Is it legitimate, legal? These are the basic questions which we have to ask ourselves, that what is the purpose of this transaction which we are proposing, where we are in dilemma, where we are in the gray area? And if the answer of that is no, hold on. The second P here is the perception. When it comes to perception, it's all about if this transaction goes through, or if this event happens, or if this dilemma goes in the side where we have the dilemma, what's going to be perception of the stakeholders for us as an individual or as an organization? What if this information goes out in the media and it becomes a headline or it gets imprinted in newspaper? Will it be perceived right by our stakeholders, by our customer, by our employees, even by our family members as well? So that's second dilemma or second test to apply is the perception. And the third one is the process. For anything to be done right, in most of the organization, process exists today. And if you are in a dilemma situation, and for that situation, the answer for purpose and perception is yes, and if the answer of the process is no, you need to think about, okay, yeah, this is one area where, the answer is coming purpose. You have a right purpose because you want to make sure it is right for the organization. You have a right perception because you're doing right. But if process doesn't exist, maybe process has to be carved out. But process for most of the right thing in the organization do exist. And that is the third test which is applied. So think about the gray area in your mind and see whether it ticks the box of purpose, perception, and process. If the answer is yes, in most of the cases, you will be comfortable to have a sleep at the night. But if the answer is no, you yourself is not convinced with that, I think that is where you have to take a stand as a leader to say no to these things. So coming to the last segment, I think in the interest of time, I'll be quick here. There are strategies and initiatives which, as a leader, we need to uphold for moral values. It starts with enhancing transparency and communication. It revolves around strengthening the ethical governance and compliance. It's a responsibility of leaders like us to make sure we create a culture where the ethical standards are being maintained, discussed, deliberated, and tracked also. So from the overall, this topic perspective, the thing which comes to my mind is the integrity is a choice between what's convenient and what's right. It's for all of us as a leader to see how do we read that situation and what action we take. With that, I'll come to the end of this small session. Happy to take a few questions or deliberate some perspectives there. Great. I think this is common sense to all of us. And I'm sure that common sense prevails, but sometimes we do come across such situation where the common sense needs to be tested there. But thank you everyone for being a patient listener. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Anil Suneja, for sharing your experience driven with knowledge. To do the honors, I request Mr. Jalad Sinha from Capita to please join us on the dais.